Welcome to the 2023 Clemson Tiger football preview and prediction. I'm going to dive into this season. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to talk too much about last season. But before I do that, if I can speak properly, I'm Brian Knight. I'm not Bobby Durkins, at least not here. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, heck, hit the thumbs down if you hate what I'm saying, and hit the notification bell. So let's dive right in. We're only about a month out as of today from the start of the 2023 season. And a moment ago, I said this, that I'm not going to talk too much about last year. Why? Because two specific characters, in fact, one is no longer with the team. How does that impact Clemson? Well, we had a pedestrian offense that put Clemson's defense, namely, out on the field. They got worn down. They gave up at times yardage and points that they normally wouldn't give up, and then actually had to take the criticism when, in fact, a lot of the fault should have been pointed back to coaching. Then we had a quarterback who was just totally in the wrong system. But that's not 2023. Now, I'm going to be as concise and try not to ramble, but I also want to give as much time as I can to the Clemson Tigers, who they are now, and what we can expect for this year. So let's move right into that. So this year, Clemson returns 8 players on the defense and 7 players on the offense. And let's start with our offensive unit. Cade Klubnik came into the North Carolina game in the ACC championship. He was thrown the keys to the car. And let's be honest with ourselves. Prior to this, Clemson football with Trevor Lawrence, even when Kelly Bryant was there, and Deshaun Watson, their backups played a lot. Well, for some reason, we did not see Cade Klubnik a lot. Why? Well, it's because the first team was struggling. Not the running game, but the first team quarterback was struggling. And the offensive play calls were predictable, boring. And as I said, I'm not going to talk too much about that. But Cade Klubnik comes in, wins the game against North Carolina, goes in and plays one of the hottest teams in America, in Tennessee, and gets beat. That's not on him, because he was still operating under that offense. Well, now he has Garrett Riley, the best offseason hire in college football, namely for a coordinator. And so now Cade Klubnik has his chance. He's worked with Riley since January. He has the playbook. They said they're going to run a smaller playbook. Riley's even went on record saying that we want to be powerful and explosive. So many times people divorces those two. You have to have both of those in championship football. He's also said, I don't care if they know the play that we're going to run. They have to stop it. I like that aggressiveness. More plays does not equal more options, folks. It can equal more confusion. And so he has made the playbook smaller, more digestible by the team. Clemson fans, some Clemson fans, the pessimistic fans, the ones that I like to say thought it was a bad idea to let Tommy Bowden go, thought it was a good idea to hire Tommy West. They're looking at Klubnik going, hey, he's not Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence. You're right. The only similarities right off the top of my head that Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson even had to each other is that they both are from the state of Georgia. They both played for Clemson, and they both won national championships, but they were different from one another. Cade Klubnik is his own, and we need to let him be his own. He's mobile. He can throw well. And with the questionable offensive line play, which I'll get to in just a moment, That's exactly who we need running our offense. The energy that you can feel coming off of the field when he walks out there is what Clemson needs. Let's move on to running back. Now, Clemson has 5 players who made All ACC. Will Shipley is one of them. He's the only offensive All ACC Clemson player on the first team. He actually got All ACC in 3 different positions, the other 2 being special teams. But the truth is, Will Shipley kept us in games over the past 2 years that with the mundane play calling, the lackluster creativity, he kept us in games that we probably shouldn't have been in. He's explosive. He can break tackles. Some people has even said he looks like he's running drunk at times. What does that mean? He's falling and he's still running. He's gaining the extra yards. Then behind him, you have Phil Maffa. Phil Maffa could start anywhere in this country, play for any team. He'll lower his pads, knock you to the ground, and then he'll hit 5th gear and outrun everybody. Behind him, we had probably, on the offensive side, the most talked about player, Dominique Thomas, Quadzilla, they call him. This guy came out and made a name for himself in the spring game. I hope we use him. Keith Adams Jr., he came out and did very well as well. Then we get to wide receiver U, the artist formerly known as wide receiver U. When you can talk about guys like Mike Williams, T. Higgins, Amari Rogers, Hunter Renfrow, Sammy Watkins, the list can go on. And then you look at the wide receiver play at Clemson over the past few years, you definitely see a fall off. How much of this? I'm going to raise some questions today. We always have to consider the variables of lack of player development, a lack of good coaching and schemes, the question at quarterback. Now, yes, they need to get more separation. But folks, if the other team knows what the play is and they have locked down on your receivers because they know what's coming because it's so pedestrian, how do you expect them to get separation? I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that they can't be more physical. I'm not saying that they can't block down the field better on runs. I agree with that. I see these things myself, but I'm always saying, let's consider all things equal here. They've had injury, 5-star Adam Randall. Everybody has been talking about Adam Randall, but the guy can't get healthy. He doesn't want to be hurt. He wants to be playing. I want him to play. Troy Stellato, this guy was big recruit, fast. I think he chose us over Ohio State. He's had a lot of health problems. Bo Collins, even when he has experienced injury, has still went out and produced. Year before last, people talked about Clemson didn't have that fast home run threat. Yes, we do. We have Antonio Williams, a true freshman out of Columbia. That was fun, getting him out of the chicken's back door. The guy can run. He's explosive, but he can catch. I've seen that guy go up in between secondary members. He knows he's going to catch the ball and land on his back, possibly get his head knocked off. And he still made the catch, held on to the football. Last year, Davis Allen, the fantastic tight end, he played his last season at Clemson, and behind him was the 6'6" Jake Brennenstuhl, a guy who can go in and possess the football at will. The show is his now. He can catch. He can play. This is a big deal. He's back. So what am I saying? Barring injury, Clemson has a wide receiver room who can go out and be dangerous. And as they're working that out, they have the running game to give them some time. The first 3 ball games, the very first game I'll get to a second with Duke, is not going to be an easy one as it normally would be. But still, Clemson has the athleticism to still dominate that game. And I believe now they have the coaching full circle. The offensive line has been a question for a few years now. I was at the Furman game last year. I saw Furman's front 4 get pressure on Clemson's quarterback. I don't care if you put me at quarterback. They should not be getting pressure on the quarterback, especially when Clemson is Clemson. And to talk about the starters there. And by the way, with the wide receivers, I left out Cole Turner. I didn't talk about him. We have Cole Turner. It came into the ACC championship, had a really nice grab there. Brandon Spector. I mean, we have talent there. And we have incoming freshmen who maybe they'll step up to. Let's move to the offensive line. Riddle me this. In the recruiting cycle with Will Shipley, we signed him. Who was the highest rated player according to 24/7 Sports? It wasn't Will Shipley. It was an offensive lineman named Tristan Lee. Tristan Lee will be playing for us this year on the line. Once again, I'm just going to offer you an idea about the offensive line. Imagine TCU when Georgia looked at them and said, you know what, we're going to pin our ears back and we're just going to go after them. I think we can throw them into a frenzy. And if we win this frenzy, our offense will be able to score against their defense and we can blow them out. That's exactly what happened. I think because people on the defensive side of the ball knew that our offensive play call was so elementary. And at times, it was almost like we had never seen the game before. Like against South Carolina, my son, who's a South Carolina fan, looked at me and said, why did you stop running the football? They couldn't stop the run. Why did y'all stop running the ABCs of football says, if it's working, keep doing it. Defenses pin their ears back and they come after you. When there's nothing to fear, even if you're playing against good talent, but the scheme is bad, they'll come with extra players and they'll make you look bad. I'm not saying that Clemson's offensive line doesn't have work to do. They definitely do, but we need to consider that. And I'm going to go through these offensive linemen pretty quickly. Tristan Lee, Marcus Tate, 6'5", 325-pound junior. Will Putnam, who's been around forever, 6'4", 315, senior. Walker Parks, that was a big recruit coming out of high school, 6'5", 315, senior. Blake Miller, 6'6", 315-pound sophomore. And if I'm these offensive linemen, and I've been hearing this trash everybody's been talking about me for the past few years, you've been blaming me for not giving enough protection during crappy play calls. You've been blaming me for the reason that the quarterback's been throwing the ball into the ground, where the wide receivers aren't getting separate. All of this stuff, I'm telling you folks, especially with Garrett Riley taking over, some things are going to prove that, yes, that was the problem. In other cases, don't be shocked. I'm not promising you this. I'm not promising you this whatsoever. Don't be shocked when just because of better play calling and a little better preparation makes both the offensive line and the wide receivers look better. It's logical. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball. You know, when you think that we just lost Brian Brisset, Miles Murphy, and Trenton Simpson, transparently, that's a massive loss. If you're kind of a drive-by college football fan, you hear of those 3 significant losses and you go, man, their defense is going to majorly fall off the cliff. But Clemson returns a fantastic lineup, even losing those 3 wonderful players, ridiculous players, incredible talents. So who are they? Justin Maskell. He's a senior. Clemson's defensive line has been so good for so long that guys like Justin Maskell kind of gets lost from time to time. I'm not saying that people don't know who he is. I'm saying they don't know to the realm of talent or the depth of talent that he has. I always butcher his name. And I met him. He was a very nice guy. Rook O'Rourke. Or Horror. Y'all forgive me. He's garnering national attention. 6'4", almost 300 pounds. He's a senior. Tyler Davis coming back. He knows what it's like to win a national championship. He brings that experience to the team. He brings the experience of working with players who are now in the NFL doing great things. He knows what it's like. He's been in the locker room. He's been in the national championship. He has the ring. That seniority anchoring up front, that's a big deal. And then one person, I believe that all of Clemson, and even people on the outside of the Clemson community who's tracked his career, followed it, is pulling for Xavier Thomas. I know I am. And I'm hoping that this year, between mentally, physically, emotionally, all of that, I hope that he brings it together, because I'm going to tell you, folks, if he pulls all of that together, we saw what he did as a freshman. He's incredible. Moving a little quicker, Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at linebacker. You know, a lot of legends, their sons go on to play the same sport, and they might be good, but they're not as good as their old man. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is living up to his old man's name. Barrett Carter, fast, brilliant, explosive. He's the type of guy that you can put him on a running back. If you're playing man and he comes out of the backfield and he's going to go up the sideline, you can put Barrett Carter on him. He's going to be just fine. A name that is slowly growing in the college football community. Clemson fans know about him, but even a lot of Clemson fans are kind of losing this guy. Wade Wood is. He's a sophomore. This guy can play. And he's not small either. He can jump up and tip he's 6'3". He can jump up and tip the ball if it goes up in the air. The secondary had injuries last year. But they come back this year with a fantastic room. Sheridan Jones, he's been there. He's done that. He's back. He's a senior. Nate Wiggins last year got picked on, I want to say, in the Wake Forest game. A lot of people was wondering what's happening to him. But if memory serves me correct, was he not also the guy who had the pick 6 against Drake May? He matured throughout the season. When most people tuck their tails and then hit the transfer portal and go somewhere else where the rest of the talent's not that good so they can shine, Nate Wiggins didn't do that. That's the type of player I want on the field. Andrew Makuba, another preseason all-ACC team member. By the way, our preseason all-ACC defensive players, Tyler Davis, Jeremiah Trotter, Barrett Carter, and Andrew Makuba. Needless to say, on the defense, we're doing pretty well. We're not dying. We're not destitute. We're not barren. Jalen Phillips at safety. Don't forget, he brings the experience of, we have everybody's either a senior or junior in our secondary. Don't forget guys like RJ Mickens, former 5-star Jaden Lucas, Tyler Venables. Folks, Toriano Pride Jr. Now we lose Potter. He's no longer kicking for us. That's a massive loss. That guy just had a leg. He was Mr. Consistent. I know there was one time this year he had like a couple of misses, but that was an eyebrow raiser because of his career. So we'll miss him. Coming in for the special teams, Aiden Swanson, he comes back. Liam Boyd, I think a couple other names. Robert Gunn. So let's dive into the schedule. So I'm going to share the schedule with you. And as you're looking at this, I want you to think about last year versus this year. I want you to think about the growth that we've seen just in this offseason since the Tennessee game. Tennessee handed it to us. But what was really crazy was that Notre Dame loss by 3 touchdowns. And everybody picked on our defense. It was offense, folks. It was offense. So I'm going to share the schedule here. And this is one of the best schedules that I can find. It's not the prettiest, but I've used it before here. So let's dive into the very first game. I did a video this week on the Duke Blue Devils. Now, it's Labor Day night. It's really weird. Duke just came off of this really weird season where first-year coach Mike Elko led them to 9 wins. They lost 4 games. Of those 4 losses, they lost by a total of 16 points. One of those losses accounted for 8 points. Now, that was early in the season before everybody knew that Kansas got a little better, which, I know their season didn't end amazing, but for Kansas, it was like winning the Super Bowl. So that means the other 3 games accounted for the other 8 points. Now, their offense, they're led by Riley Leonard, 6'4", 210-pound, dual threat quarterback. He's a junior. He's a true dual threat quarterback. What do I mean by that? What that means is some teams, they call it their quarterback a dual threat quarterback. In reality, what it is a really good athlete who has an okay arm, and the team is just working with what they have, but they're truly not a quarterback. This guy is a true dual threat quarterback. You have to respect him. Almost all of his receivers are seniors. Almost all of his offensive line are seniors. They returned 16 starters. On the defensive front, they have Dwayne Carter, all ACC interior defensive lineman. Now, their defense gave up almost 40 points per game last year. That was their problem. If you do a little math there and you think about that for a second, that same Duke team could have been 12-1. Yes, you could argue they would have played a better opponent if they went to a better bowl, and they might not have won that game. Fair point. I concede. 11-2? And they have transfers in from Texas A&M as well as Al Blades Jr. from University of Miami. This game is not going to be a walk in the park. But I believe Clemson's going to travel well. Their fans are going to travel well. And that 40,000-seat stadium could easily be half orange, if not more. Hopefully Clemson doesn't have to show their playbook. What I mean by show their playbook is they can come out there, get the job done, conceal their playbook, because the very next week they're playing Charleston Southern, and the next week Florida Atlantic. They're not going to get caught looking forward to some big game. Plus, Clemson is so lowly paying attention to Duke because of that reason. The day before, Florida State plays LSU in Orlando. They have to show their playbook to win that game. Clemson most likely will not have to show their playbook until the Florida State game. I believe because they are completely focused on Duke, I believe they win this ball game by a couple of touchdowns. But folks, if they win by 7 points, don't think Clemson football is terrible. Duke has improved a lot. Next game up, these next 2 games will be really simple. Charleston Southern. That'll be a money game. Next up, Florida Atlantic. The only interesting part about that is that Tom Herman, former Texas coach, now with Florida Atlantic, will be coming to Death Valley. Clemson will win that ball game. And then the game that we all been paying attention to, Florida State. Now, Florida State returns some significant players. Florida State returns Jordan Travis, fifth-year senior. This guy can play. Preseason All-ACC, Trey Benson, the running back. The guy rushed for almost 1,000 yards. Johnny Wilson, the 6'7", 240-pounder. This guy can play. They added some transfers like Jaheim Bell from the University of South Carolina. And though I despise the University of South Carolina, I watched him play live. The guy can ball. Jared Verse on the defensive line. A great story, transferring from what? University of Albany or something like that, then transferring into Florida State. This guy's now a first rounder? Fentrell Cypress, the transfer from Virginia. They picked him up in the transfer portal. This team is talented, and Clemson is going to have to give them more respect than they've had to give Florida State in a very long time. This is a toss-up game, or this is a game of concern that Clemson could lose. But I believe because this game is going to be in Death Valley, because Florida State will have to show their playbook in week 1, and hopefully Clemson will not have to show much of their playbook against Duke. Barring delay or incarceration, what am I kidding? We're not at the University of Georgia. Clemson, I lean heavily towards winning this game. I lean in the 65 to 75% range that they win this ball game because of location, because of having to conceal the playbook. Then we play at Syracuse. Dino Babers, I know what he's done. I know what he's done against us. I respect Dino Babers. I think that a lot of teams has missed out on going and hiring him. But his team, other than his tight end, is not that good. And we have to be very, very careful. But I truly believe Clemson wins this ball game. The next ball game, they play Wake Forest. It's back in Death Valley. Wake Forest is missing Sam Hartman. What's the likelihood that we still have to play Sam Hartman? Clemson wins that ball game. Then they have a much needed week off. I like that it's, mid-season. Then they play the University of Miami. The University of Miami, and I was watching the 1994 Miami Florida State game. There's a 48-minute condensed version on YouTube right now. Go watch it. Warren Sapp, Ray Lewis, they're playing on the defense. Florida State's just come off their national championship win with Charlie Ward. It's a great classic to go watch. It was a hard-fought game. But Miami is not Miami. They're a shell of history. They have the same jerseys. They don't even play at the same stadium anymore. They're the U, but they're not the U. I think Clemson wins this ball game. Now we play at NC State. NC State, even when Clemson was hitting on all cylinders, has been a problem for us. Dave knows how to get under the skin of Clemson. Now, they have Brennan Armstrong, the transfer, the redheaded left-handed quarterback, transferred from Virginia because Devin Leary transferred to Kentucky. This is a game you're going to have to pay attention to. I'm not going to give it a toss-up status at this moment, but it's a game of concern. This is a game you have to pay attention to. If they get caught, looking forward to Notre Dame the next week, that November 4th game in the Valley, maybe. It's a game of concern, but I believe Clemson can pull this game out. Next up, Notre Dame. We know what happened in South Bend last year. The same Notre Dame team who lost to Marshall and Stanford, of all people, Stanford, blew Clemson out by 3 touchdowns. It was rumored that Nick Eason went to Dabo Swinney in that game and said, you have to do something about your offense. True. Notre Dame comes to Clemson. They have to play. Clemson has to play Sam Hartman. They have Joe Alt on the offensive line, who was arguably the best offensive lineman in America. If you're an NFL team and you need an offensive lineman, Joe Alt's probably your man. By this time, though, we'll know if Notre Dame is decent, really good, or great. You say, why do you say that? Because by this point, they will have already played Ohio State, NC State, and Southern Cal before they get to this game. So if I'm going to tell you this, if Notre Dame comes into this game and they're undefeated, they're legitimate. Just throwing that out there. There's my, public service announcement. If they come into this game even with one loss, this might have College Game Day written all over it. This is a game. This is a toss-up game at this point. So we have 2 toss-up games and 1 game of concern. Next up, Georgia Tech comes to Clemson. You have to give Brent Key, and I believe that's his name, the interim coach, now turned head coach for Georgia Tech. You have to give him a little credit. Taking over that mess last year. What a mess. He didn't do too bad. Clemson wins this ball game. The very next week, North Carolina comes to town. We know who's coming to town. Now, I've heard a lot of people say Drake May is going to be the second quarterback taken. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, with the immaturity that I've seen out of Caleb Williams, if people are willing to choose that immaturity and lack of leadership over Drake May, yeah, the system's broken. They'll probably do it just because the system's broken. But I believe Drake May is the best quarterback in college football. Unfortunately, his defense is not that great. He lost Josh Downs. I'm not telling you that this is going to be a gimme game. This will be a game of concern, all because Drake May. And then next up, it's South Carolina. I believe it was Dabo Swinney who said, I don't supposed to like him, but I can't help but like Shane Beamer. Folks, I'm in the same boat with him. I despise the Gamecocks. Any notoriety or anybody who knows me, they know me as Bobby Durkins, the babbling redneck that, believe it or not, a lot of people still doesn't know that he is fake. I love that. But one of my first well-known videos was me making fun of the chickens. I cannot stand South Carolina. But I like Shane Beamer. And Shane Beamer is a really good football coach. He has Spencer Rattler. One moment, the guy looks inconsistent. The next moment, he makes a throw that makes you go, good grief. He can move. Recruiting, they're doing pretty well considering this is South Carolina. They're doing really well there. But right now, I think Clemson has revenge on their mind. This is a major game of concern, if anything, because it's a rivalry game. But you add in that Shane Beamer is the coach. You add in that they return their starting quarterback, that they've picked up some guys here and there. Folks, I'm telling you, Clemson fans, we might not like this. This is a game to pay attention to and to respect. You can despise someone and still respect them. You can prepare for that. So this is a game of question, of importance. You have to pay attention to it. And then, of course, the ACC championship. Remember, there's no more divisions. If Clemson's lost a game and came in second, they're still in the ACC championship. A lost a conference game, that is. So, what is my prediction for the Tigers? I'm going to give you worst case, what I think, and best case. Realistic best case. Worst case scenario, 9-3. Lose to Florida State, lose to Notre Dame, and then lose one of those questionable games. NC State, North Carolina, or South Carolina. So there's, I think, worst case scenario. I don't think that you're going to see less than 9-3. Could be shocked, but I don't think so. Best case scenario, obviously, they run the table. It's not out of the realm of possibility with the players they have returning. Once you break them down, the new offensive coordinator, at the beginning, other than the Duke game, the time that the offense has to become acclimated to playing someone who were in different jerseys, who were on another team leading up to that Florida State game. It's very possible. They could go undefeated and make it back to the college football playoff. Now, I'm not calling that they're going to win the national championship, but I'm just saying they could make it there. That is not out of the realm of possibility. I think that they're going to have to play consistent football. You have to remember the year that Deshaun Watson won the national championship, they lost one game. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. They just see the throw at the end to Hunter Renfrow, but they forget about that part. They lost that game. They almost lost 2 or 3 other games that season. It's hard to go undefeated. What I think Clemson's going to do, I believe they're going to go realistically 11-1. I think 11-1. I think that they get out of a lot of those games with a W. But I think that they could drop one of those games at concern, or they could drop either the Notre Dame or the Florida State game. So 11-1, worst case scenario, 9-3. Best case scenario, they actually run the table. Folks, I want to tell you this in my closing thoughts, that I have not been this optimistic about Clemson football since the year after Trevor, Etienne, and T won a national championship. And then after that season, something was going on with the offense. Something was odd. Maybe it was because there was a target on their back. But after that, you remember Jeff Scott left, and everybody goes, well, Jeff wasn't calling plays. Folks, I'll say it and say it again. When that man left, something happened. I don't care if he was starching their underwear and that was the magic. That was something happened, because when Tony had the show all on his own, it looked bad. You know it. I know it. We all know it. I mean, and then last year was just absolutely embarrassing. We have been surviving off of talent for a long time. I am more optimistic because now we have talent. We have some seniority. In certain parts of the ball, we have a lot of certain units on the team. We have a lot of seniority. But now it seems that we've come full circle with a competent defensive coordinator and a competent offensive coordinator. Folks, we will see. The season will be here. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe, hit the notification, pass this along to everyone in your forums, and pass it to your friends and neighbors. We will be at we're at the brink of college football right now. Thanks for joining me. You take care, and I'll see you next time.